first annual Car and Drivers Editors Roundtable at the 2013 Detroit show. We have Dan Pun, Deputy Editor, Jeff Sabatini, Features Editor, and Aaron Robinson, Executive Editor, and we're going to talk about what we liked at the show. First up, I can think the big story, obviously, is Corvette.
Didn't see it.
You didn't see it? Okay. Well, maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, but what do you think? Was it a big deal?
It was the big deal. I mean, everything is measured in proximity to the Corvette at this show.
Right.
It's the only thing that's really huge.
Well, when I saw Taj, the chief engineer, I said, congratulations on making it to the day. Because, you know, there were times and moments during the bankruptcy when that car was on the block. And, you know, they weren't certain, I don't think, that the car was going to make it. And, you know, the fact that they're here, and not only here, but the star of the show, I think is a big deal.
It was a pretty spectacular lead up to it. I wasn't disappointed with it when I saw it. I thought, you know, the criticism that I've heard around the show floor is that it's a little juvenile, a little too aggressive, but I think that's what it needs to be. I mean, what is the average age of the Corvette owner right now? It's got to be high 50s, 60s.
Older than all of us.
Right, exactly. But I mean, I think that's a bedroom wall poster car. I think that thing is very, very cool looking.
A
very
bit
aggressive.
of hooliganism is a good thing for the Corvette.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be poster material. It needs to be, you know, erotic dreams material. I mean, that's what that car needs. It needs sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Even in gray? Even in gray, is it work for
Well,
I thought the gray was awesome, actually.
It mutes the black trim.
Yeah, that's my problem with the dark color is like the interesting vents on the corners go away, and the you know, kind of interesting glass openings.
Interesting or busy. I mean, I thought on the red car, all the black stuff, all the grill inserts and all that, I thought it was too much. So I like the gray, but you know, either way.
I mean, my thing about the Corvette is it's a great example of a car where the pictures didn't do it justice. I mean, we write that all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think the reader's like, well, what do you mean? I can see the picture, you know, what's wrong? I mean, how can the pictures not do the car justice? But in the Corvette's case, a lot of the advanced pictures came out, they were shot really low. And so the grille looked enormous. I mean, it just looked like this air conditioning
And the car looked
duct.
jacked up.
And the shoulders looked really high and everything. But when you actually stand in front of the car and you look down on it, because it's a low car, then everything kind of worked. It's like the grille is very proportionate. It's very low. The daylight openings are quite big. The shoulders are actually quite low. The rear end tapers nicely. It's not this enormous giant tush that it used to be. So
it has a lot of sharp angles to it, and there's not a lot of depth in the photos because everything gets flattened out.
Right.
And when you see it in person, I mean, the car pops. It becomes a car, and I can't wait to see it on the street. Even.
Absolutely. Chair height from another car, that's kind of a true test.
Well, you'll be looking down on it. I mean, it is so low. It seems so much smaller than the C6.
But it's bigger.
But that's the thing. It seems smaller. It seems like the car is shrunk because visually it's more interesting and there's more angles going on in the design. I love it.
The C6 seems doughy by comparison.
It's fat, sort of like the C5 was to the C6. I mean, it keeps thinning out and muscling up, you know, and I think it's a great look.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned,
Kind of like Aaron.
if there's a disappointment, it's that it is just an evolutionary design.
But wait a second. I mean, design-wise, yeah, but underneath it, I think what they've done is pretty remarkable. You know, the materials mix, unprecedented. Carbon fiber hood, carbon fiber roof, $53,000, aluminum, hydroform frame.
No, but that only makes the evolutionary exterior design all the more disappointing. I mean, you change everything about the car underneath it. I mean, certainly a lot of things about it underneath it, the engine, everything. And then you kind of do a form that, let's face it, the form language is pretty similar to the old car.
But it lost the basket handle. Every Corvette's an evolution of the Corvette that came before it.
Well,
it's a much bigger
63.
But yeah,
But
I mean, why has it got to be that way?
compare this
Exactly.
911.
63 is a great example.
Compare this 911 to the 64 911. Completely different cars, but still it's the same form of language. And I know
Don't get me started about 911.
I do want to get you started on the 911.
The 911 has gone down an evolutionary dead end. The Corvette does not have to follow that path. The 911 is an iconic shape, which means they can't reshape it because then it doesn't look like 911. The buyers don't want it. So
It already doesn't look like a 911.
and Porsche and Volkswagen, by extension, they don't want to take that chance. I mean, they could do a mid-engine supercar and call it a 911, and they can call it whatever they want. But the buyers will say, it doesn't look like a 911, I don't want it. So that car is down a dead end. It can't go anywhere. Why does the Corvette have to be that way? I mean, the
I don't think it's going down a
C5,
dead end, though.
C6, great-looking cars. Why does the C7 have to go down that same alleyway?
I
could
think
have
it's
gone completely
I think it's
new
headed out
direction.
of that alleyway though.
Well, we'll see.
There's still a lot of old guys with money, and they couldn't quite piss all of them off, right? I mean, you gotta split the difference. You've got a lot of fans, and I mean, even young guys are still fans of the current design. I mean, I think you got to take steps, and I think it would have been better if they would have taken this step when they put out the C6. If this car would have come out when the C6 came out, I think it would have been better. I think we're just still disappointed that the C6 wasn't enough of an evolutionary leap
It was a C5.
over the
Well,
C5.
yeah, C6 was really kind of a low budget,
Right.
changeover. And I mean, I think the eventually, yeah, we'll get there. But the problem is when they come out with a new Corvette, we're stuck with this car for 10 or 12 years. I mean, this is not gonna.
At least we got one.
No, I'm not.
We almost didn't get anyone.
I am searching for things to complain about. But the fact is that we've got this car for a long time, and what we basically have is the same form language that we've had with the last two
Well,
generations.
not the same basic proportion, but I think there's a hell of a lot more detailing, a lot more sculpting.
But that's it. It's in the details.
And no one said that the interior is finally like good, like nice looking, like not Corvette-y.
Wow, that was
Compare it against the C4 interior. It looks exactly the same as the C4 interior.
but done with better materials.
Right,
But
done with
at
better
the-
materials.
When the C4 was new, the C4 interior wasn't, beaten up on for being terrible and awful the way the C6 was.
Yeah.
So I will stick my hand up and beat up down the interior of the C7 and say it's just not very inventive. I mean, it's.
I don't want
it's
invention.
prob-
I just want it to be just nice
just want
and
it to
not.
work.
Yeah, it's
And the
functional.
seats to feel good and hold you in place. Is
And
that
they
too
look
much
like
to
they
ask?
will, but they wouldn't let me sit in it. So
Okay.
Yeah, they
So
won't
you-
let you sit in
you
the
don't know.
sport seats, right? They'll let you sit in the basic seats, but not in the sport ones yet.
no, they were hands off the seats.
Okay.
about
Well, I
the
think that's
steering
enough
wheel?
Corvette, don't you think?
Well, what about the name?
Stingray?
Good, bad?
I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I
Why
like
not?
the fact that they made the new little icon thing out of the Stingray.
You like that?
With that
You like
badge.
that?
Not
I
really
like-
obvious what it is, though. I mean,
Well,
I had
but-
to explain it to people.
But
It's a
Stingrays don't
Stingray,
swim
get it?
that way. They
Well,
don't swim.
They are if you're looking out for looking down on them, but
But I like any time a car company comes up with an actual badge, something cool, some little, item of design instead of just,
Numbers and letters.
yeah. I mean, let's have more animal names. Period.
And
How about names? Atlas. We
There
can
you go.
segue here. We'll segue out of Corvette into
Okay.
Atlas.
I think the Audi RS7 should be called the Atlas, not the RS7.
But the
As an Atlas
F-150 is
rocket?
already called Atlas.
But I think it should be named, the RS7 should be named the Atlas because it's cool. And that car deserves more than an alphanumeric designation. You know what the
Yeah.
coolest thing about it is, and I'm going to sound totally superficial here now, but on the lower part of the grill, it says Quattro on it. You know, like on the F40 wing where
Right.
it's embossed, or is it debossed, F40? You're like, some kid on a Lambretta scooter just like rolled up, boss, I got it. We put it inside. There's those little touches in that car that are so cool that just make it, and that kind of honeycomb interior.
I hate the Quattro. I hate
You don't
that.
like that?
No, I don't like it at all.
Why not?
No, I just think it's kind of cheesy. It doesn't say high-end performance to me.
are you
It
sure
says,
you're not objecting to the car because it's white and has chrome wheels?
It's white and it has chrome wheels.
Isn't that?
It's
That's just show
Now,
car
I know
stuff.
Audi has kind of a tradition of doing white concept cars, but still, a white car on that blindingly white platform.
Yeah, I got to say, their
It
presentation
looks like
of
a
it
snow
could have been
leopard.
better. Because, the thing sounds like it's going to be spectacular. 560 horsepower. I mean, it's
It's an
going to be...
S8, only smaller.
With
Right.
more power, yeah.
Should
What's
be
not
good.
to like?
What's not to like?
And
So-
whether the detail, whether we like the detail or not, the point is that the detail's there, and I think that every car maker needs to pay more attention to those little details, because when so many cars are starting to look alike, and the grille of the Q50 kind of looks like the Lexus spindle grille, the
Yeah, that was
details.
fairly shocking.
It was weird,
Yeah.
but the details are what's going to separate, your brand out when you're out selling on a global platform, and the little details.
So
not
you should put Quattro on the front, in the grill.
well, if you're
It's so cool.
It's not cool.
I think you're gonna have to agree to hate each other on that one.
Well, I mean,
I plead the fifth.
well, would your 11-year-old self think it's cool?
Yes.
Well,
Okay,
it'd be
there
cool
you
if
go.
you got hit by one and it had, Quattro embossed
on
down
it,
your
yeah.
leg,
It's part
and
of
then it would be
Pedestrian
cool.
crash standards.
Yeah, I mean that would be like a badge of
branding.
honor, right?
My 11-year-old self would think everything is cool. It's just like
What do you think that the Kia Concept is cool? I'm sorry, the
The
Hyundai.
No, that was actually a very good slip because that is the Kia Genesis. They won't say it, but those
that's-
are all the pictures that we've seen. We're talking about
But
what is it called?
The fake A7.
the
Yeah,
HCD
yeah.
14.
14.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's what they've been showing as the B9 or B12 or whatever the name was they had for the Kia Concept. That's basically the Kia version of the Genesis, which we all know is a really bad idea. That's that car. I mean, that's what they just
It's
showed
not
us.
going to be the Hyundai.
No.
No.
It's hopefully not
It's-
going to be anything.
It's bad. It's like a swollen A7.
And it has a
Somebody's
beard.
like smashed the
But
front
that-
end. It's got a
that front
beard
No
on it.
offense,
Totally
but it
Gangnam
has a
Style,
beard.
don't you think?
It's not a nice beard.
It's like
What does
looks
Gangnam Style mean? What does
from
that
the
mean?
video.
It means
Oh.
it means you think you're a lot cooler than you really are.
Well, no, but it looked like in the scene where he's in the video. Haven't you seen the video?
Seen the video.
Where he's walking,
Yes, I
blowing
have
the
a child.
snow at him. That's what I'm guarantee that's the inspiration.
The one
for that
thing,
face.
the front is mysteriously strange, but the side of it, the flame surface side, is totally cool.
And totally BMW.
Well, I wanted them to light
Well,
up.
what
Light up
is
the
it
front
flame
end.
surfaced?
Well, it's
It
It's
is.
an
It has that
A7.
ridge, and then it has the.
It's an
It's-
A7 copy, but poorly done.
it's
With the grill from a Lagonda concept from 2 years ago.
it's just
Which
too
is
many.
universally acknowledged as the most
I was
hideous
trying
thing.
to get him to light up the front end because did you see those two giant diaphragms
That's the
of
beard.
LEDs? And it
That's
was
the
like,
That's the
beard.
beard,
light those
yeah.
up.
The little fuzzy little beard. at
Or
the
like
bottom.
kind of a lamprey eel, like
Yeah, exactly.
the mouth of a lamprey eel.
It's hideous.
A little strange.
It's got
And I-
suicide doors.
What doesn't?
Everybody
hey, it's
knows-
a car show.
It's
Everybody
gull wings
knows-
or suicide doors or floating seats. It's
I
got to
gotta
be
have
one of
floating
those,
seats.
otherwise
I
it's not
don't
a
blame
car.
him for trying. It's kind of a throwback that concept because if you go back 10 or 20 years, they used to do these really extravagant, wild.
It's
you
really
know,
the only. What is
concepts.
it? I mean, what other concept is there at the show that is?
Well, it's like you go to look at that Honda crossover concept, the Fit Base, for which they have no name, and I mean that's
The urban
like
SUV.
essentially the car,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
I mean the lines are a little pulled
Right.
and a little softer, but just basically the car. So there's not a lot of sizzle there. I mean it's just here's the car, we just haven't quite finished it yet, so here's our foam mock-up.
So another car that is sort of a faux concept car is this BMW 4 Series. What is the?
But that's basically the car.
it's-
I mean,
yeah,
how
it's the
much is that
basic-
gonna
you
change?
It's
know,
the car
the-
with some fascia
the fascia
changes and-
changes will be, I think, significant, but I think it'll make the car look better.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
excited about that thing. I think it's. I don't know about the naming convention. I don't know if it's smart to have an M4 and an M3. I don't know, but I just think that envelope is beautiful, that the greenhouse is gorgeous, and I bet if you look at it dimensionally, that thing is bigger than a 6 Series from the 80s.
No doubt. And that
big
thing
car.
is so low and so wide compared to the current 3
Yeah.
Series coupe. It's got great stance. I mean, it's
we'll see
like,
what it looks like in production.
well, I mean, I don't think the dimensions will change a great deal. I think the detailing and the side view mirrors were sort of like cantilevered out and,
Right.
pods sitting on top of a ledge and all that. But, I think the proportions will be essentially that.
Yeah.
Well, and hopefully what they do, having split the 3 and the 4, is that it allows them to make the 4 a little bit more of an enthusiast car. Well, we know that the 3...
Listen to yourself, man.
What?
You're
No, but
talking about
don't-
numbers. The one's
but-
more enthusiast
No,
oriented.
but don't you think that one of the reasons they split the 3 Series coupe out into the 4 is because the 3 Series they're very concerned with fuel efficiency, and that's more of a mass market product than the coupe, and it gives them the ability
okay.
to do some things with the coupe to make it maybe lower and wider and have more aggressive tires than on the sedan. Or you think it's just going to
No,
be
I think
straight
they just
up
wanted the
coupe
sedans
version
to be
of the
odd
sedan?
numbers and the coupes to be even numbers.
It's all
Because
about
Audi's
numbers.
doing
That's
it.
all
There's
Yeah,
no-
I think it was an
Yes.
idea that just took
Because
on a
it's
life
a
of its
classic.
own.
I mean, thank God, the Germans are still German. I mean, it's cool that they have an entire committee. I'm sure. That,
board
that
member.
argued about this, for 4 years.
Board member
And-
in charge of nomenclature.
Exactly, and,
Yeah,
and I think there's this logic to it, and of course Germans are completely driven by this logic, and so they'd have to, because it's only sentimentalists who say, well, it's a 3 Series, must always be a 3 Series.
Right.
And the
Yeah,
Germans, logically, our coupes should be these even numbers, and our sedans should be these odd
Who
numbers.
cares? It's a great looking thing. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to end up calling it like the 4 Series S-Drive 35 ID521 anyway, so it's kind of a moot point.
I think, you know, a board member has a friend in the badge business at BMW, and he's like,
There's a daughter married to the head of the company. That's how it works.
right, the guy who makes
Europe.
the badges. What else did you guys see that you liked or didn't like?
I've been trying to-
Nissan Concept. What was it?
That's the next Murano.
Yeah, exactly. But it's got the big Nissan face to it. The Versa hatchback looked a lot better, I thought, than I was
Yeah.
expecting.
The Note?
Yeah, it's
The
kind of
Versa
cool.
Note.
I mean, I watched it, I was
I
like,
think it's-
wow, this just looks like such a much better, higher
Right.
quality car than the sedan, which
Okay,
of course
it
not
looks
how it's
better
supposed
than the
to be.
sedan, but the sedan is now, I think, recognized by our magazine at least as maybe the worst new car on the road.
Yeah, it's like 1990 retro.
It's pretty horrible.
I think
And the Note to me is
Would have been a
is
great
failure.
Geo-Prism, that
It's
car.
just they should have called it the Note failure, the failed Note. I mean, it's not going anywhere.
It's not, but the problem is,
The
is
brown
it's, not,
note.
it's not an improvement on the old Versa hatchback. It looks like it's smaller. It's not as aesthetically.
Stylistically, it is.
It's not as aesthetically pleasing to my eye. I think they've missed an opportunity with the Versa.
Well,
frankly,
I think we can
across
all
the board.
acknowledge that.
We can agree
I
on
don't
that.
think the Note helps. I mean, it's just another cheap car.
Hey, did you guys see the, speaking of cheap cars, the CLA, the Mercedes
Yes,
CLA?
saw it. I
How
did.
good is that? It's great.
Awesome.
It's
Best
cool.
Mercedes. I think it's the best looking Mercedes that I've seen, period. I mean, it's amazing how well all that works on such a small car.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on. I mean,
But
there's
it-
a lot of
but
surfacing.
they
There's
pulled-
a lot of
pulled
ridges
it
and
off.
edges, and
I think it was better than CLS.
If you like the styling on the CLA, you're going to see it on all of the product lines. I mean, they've seen what Audi has done with just taking that kind of sweeping, arcs, and they've done it on the entire product line. And then traditionally, Mercedes has kind of broken up the products. They haven't done small, medium, large. The S-Class has been a more formal product for its buyers, and the E-Class has kind of done its own thing. And now that styling, that CLA styling is going to go across the line. And so they're kind of following their competitors in that respect. And I think they make a mistake by doing that. They don't recognize that the S-Class buyer is still the most formal, upright sedan buyer, I think, in the entire segment. I mean, let Jaguar do their wild stuff with the XJ, and Audi's doing their thing with Quattro. Mercedes should still be a Mercedes. So.
Well, I, for one, am excited about a small Mercedes four-wheel drive AMG version of that car. I think it should be great. I mean, the hard part is, right, we're just kind of judging the styling here and the specs. We don't get a chance to drive these things until much later. So we're sort of limited in what we can speak about. But I think there are two cars that are still significant that we haven't talked about, that we know a lot about, which is the Maserati Quattroporte and then the Lincoln MKC. Quattroporte, I think, is kind of controversial. I love that old car.
Yeah.
With the transaxle. It was basically a four-door 612 Scaglietti. It was rear weight biased. It drove great. It was deeply flawed, and it was small and tiny inside, but it smelled like the inside of a shoe. It was 100% Italian all the way through. And this one doesn't seem to have that, what's the right word for it?
sex appeal.
Yeah. It seems big.
Italianness.
Yeah.
It seems big. It seemed bloated. Its detailing is not particularly interesting. The back end looks a little bit like an Audi.
Well, but the irony is they may sell a heck of a lot more of these.
Yeah, I don't
It's
care.
a good move for the company. It's a smart move because they have huge volume aspirations relatively huge
Yeah.
volume aspirations for where they came from.
But we're assuming that because it's ugly, it'll sell more than the old one.
No, it's just
The
there's
packaging.
more product range. It's bigger. There's all-wheel drive. It's it's got a much more.
Still really expensive for its market.
All right, but if you look at what it's competing against, I mean, if it's $100,000, or actually it's more, it's $150,000. Okay, but you're competing against S-Class. You're competing against full-size Jags. I mean,
And
the
listen,
BMW 7
but
Series.
how do
These
you
are all
do-
cars that offer range of engines,
How do you do
all-wheel
that with
drive.
Chrysler switchgear?
Well, that's
a good point.
problematic.
That is
Back
problematic.
to mine.
The
It's
interior
Okay,
has
Chrysler
high points.
switchgear is okay because the old car had Fiat switchgear, but the problem is you got to really disguise it.
The
only
interior
reason
has
we
high
didn't
points
have
on
the
both
old
sides.
cars
think
because
they-
we didn't have any
Yeah,
Fiats back
we
then.
weren't familiar
we didn't
enough
know,
with
yeah,
the
we didn't know
switchgear.
what it was.
It doesn't look to me like they sweated the details out, though. I mean,
Oh.
there's not enough interesting things to look at on that car, to my mind.
Here's why I think there's space in the market for that car. If you live in a certain zip code, you see S-Classes and 7 Series and A8s coming. Maybe not A8s, but those kinds of cars coming and going. You kind of need something different to set yourself apart if you care about that. If you live in those kinds of zip codes, you probably do care about that.
I guess. I just think that the Maserati name has been so damaged over the years that I'm not sure it carries the weight that
This is
it
not going to
needs
help
to.
it.
I don't think so. I don't
It
think
ends
so.
in a vowel.
I mean,
So does Audi, though.
The problem with Maserati isn't volume.
Yeah.
I mean, Ferrari sells 7,000 cars a year, and their brand is golden. I mean, the problem with Maserati is the products always kind of just miss the mark. And I'm not sure that coming out with a more mainstream vehicle that's going to pump their volumes up is really going to solve their problem, which is that the cars depreciate like anchors going to the bottom of the ocean, and the brand doesn't mean a lot. It's hard for them to command the kind of prices they'd like to command.
Right, and now as they move forward and try to get 50,000 units per year, and they have an SUV, and they're going to have a smaller sedan, and I'm not sure that that's helping the brand image.
Well, but
either,
aren't they kind of, they're in this catch-22 though, where the brand has not enough cachet to be valuable, and they kind of need to sell more cars to build up some momentum with the brand before it can before people can understand what it is.
Right.
Because part of the whole thing about that zip code is it's not just that you want to let your own particular distinct style show, but you want your neighbors to know what it is. And if your neighbors think it's a Buick or something, that's not cool, right?
Well,
I think
it's got
everyone-
portholes.
I think everyone knows what a Maserati is, right?
I
You don't
don't-
have to
I don't think
explain
so.
that.
Well,
that
but
much.
I don't think
they
so.
aspire to be. I mean, from the volume, they aspire to be Jaguar. Is that what they should aspire to be? I mean,
Well,
you know, it's can you survive selling $50,000 cars that are expensive to engineer and produce? I mean, it's a tough number to bank on. I mean, let's say it's not working out for Jaguar very well.
Okay, well, Aaron gets the last word on that. Speaking of brands in reconstruction mode, Lincoln, what do you think of the MKC?
I thought it looked really cool.
I did too.
I think they sort of went like a little bit Land Rover LRX, which was the concept that
Right.
became the Evoque, which I think is good. I mean, forget practicality, make it cool looking, make it pretty,
Right.
and I love it. I think it looks great.
I like the belt line. I think the thing, it really looks terrific. I don't know how they're going to dumb it down for the road,
Right.
which is always kind of the question. And I don't know if they're going to do what needs to be done to distinguish it enough and differentiate it enough from the Escape. Because that was one of my real disappointments with the MKZ was the switchgear.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the interior design is beautiful, the exterior design is beautiful, but you get in it and it doesn't feel like it's anything but a Ford inside.
Right.
Well, and that's where that concept has a great interior. And one thing that they did learn with the MKZ, if they're going to go push-button transmission, they actually use that to open up space in the center console,
Right.
which I was glad to see. It was like, hey, they figured out to make that better. You know, I like the fact that the interior is more compact than in an Escape. And you know, part of this, we had this discussion about the impracticality of a luxury vehicle. There's something you can get away with in a luxury car in terms of impracticality that actually gives you a selling point,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, let's face it, nobody's using a
Aaron's
back
not
seat in
buying
those
that.
things. Those are two-seat vehicles, essentially.
I think the goal is to do RX 350 numbers. I mean, they'd like to sell 100,000 of those things, you know, and so impracticality doesn't fly. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, I will say I think the timing is kind of unfortunate because they're launching, this is the coming out party for that brand, right? I mean, they've just been wallpapering the media with their advertising, and they've got this enormous booth that's obviously
They have
a
a
lot
new
of
name.
style, the new name, the Lincoln Motor Company, the whole thing.
Totally
And
different than Ford Motor Company.
This show
Right.
is their coming out party, and what is spinning on this thing is a version of the Escape, which I think is kind of unfortunate. I mean, the Z really should have been up on that stand because it's a beautiful.
So because it's a version of a more attractive Ford.
Well, exactly, and it is actually more attractive than the version
But listen,
that it's
Lincoln's
based on.
only 3% of Ford. They have to do something to get their volumes up. They need to show that they're serious, and I think that an RX clone sort of does that.
Well, but I mean, I think it's probably the first time in history that a brand was relaunched on the basis of a compact SUV. I mean, you know, it's not exactly the
A
thing
Halo
that gets
car?
the blood, you know, coursing.
What's the biggest growth opportunity in the market right now, though?
Well, it's also the buffet.
Compact?
It's the buffet table that's got the most people fighting for it. So I mean,
Wow.
you got some very tough competition. That
Well,
you're gonna have to.
but it is a buffet table. All you can eat. You just got to step up to the buffet, and I think
I'm not
Lincoln's-
following this metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, like the
It's
never
the
mind.
Scrod baked.
No,
what
but I
he's
mean-
saying is Lincoln is baked Scrod.
Okay, I
Right.
like
No,
that.
I'm
Right.
saying
And
I'm
then-
saying Lincoln
Au
knows
gratin?
that if they can launch into this market, it's a huge market. They can get a piece of it. They can get their volumes up, and then maybe they can do something else that's even cooler that takes them into the direction they
What
need
he's
to go.
saying is that compact SUVs, luxury SUVs, are a bigger rat race, but there's more cheese.
So we'll give Aaron the last word on that one. We've been Car and Driver from the Detroit Auto Show. Thanks very much for watching.